All month long, we've been celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage on News 12. And on this special episode of On a Positive Note, we're recapping the best of the best from our team coverage. Today, all of our news is good news. I'm Judea Murray, and here on A Positive Note, we highlight the most heartwarming stories from all around the tri-state that move and inspire us. And what better way to do that than to start with today's trailblazers, honoring their ancestors who journeyed to America over 400 years ago. Climbing, striving, and working their way to the top, let's hear from the first generation Americans heating things up in New York City's fire department.
My parents came from Hong Kong. They immigrated here in the early 80s, and then for me, I was born here. They basically told me to just get an education, get a good job, and then from there on, you could do whatever you want.
For these members of the FDNY, becoming firefighters was the dream.
Nobody in my family has ever been a part of the department before, and I am the first Chinese-American female firefighter with the FDNY. I'm one of 4 Asian women with the fire service. A lot of people are surprised when they hear that this is something that I wanted to pursue, but I feel like I can prove that just like anybody else, I can do the job and I deserve to be here.
And joining the FDNY's Phoenix Society has helped to do that.
We are an inclusive fraternity where we have both Asian and non-Asian members, as well as fire and EMS members, and we all come together to do community events to just bring togetherness and inclusion.
Just like being a firefighter has given me purpose, I'd say the society has also given me purpose in bridging the gap with my community.
And they say Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is another chance to come together and share their cultures.
We get to celebrate the Asian community in all aspects, supporting different businesses, just being out together.
While at the same time being leaders in New York City and showing young people who look just like them that they too can be whatever they want.
I do want to bring that inspiration to these kids and saying, like, you too can become a firefighter. It is not out of reach.
Nothing's out of reach if you're ambitious enough to go for it. That's how these next 3 leaders became the first in their field. Like Kamala Harris. Not only did she become the highest-ranking woman in the history of the United States in 2020, but she'll be forever honored as the first U.S. Vice President of Asian descent. Helping pave the way for Asian Americans in politics was Inouye. He was the first Japanese American to serve in the House and in the Senate. He represented the beautiful islands of Hawaii. And we're making history within our tri-state too. In 2018, Bhalla became the first elected mayor in the U.S. who is Sikh. Mayor Ravi represents Hoboken, New Jersey, wearing his turban with pride. They may be the first, but they won't be the last. In fact, there's another mayor in New Jersey in our spotlight, this time by way of South Korea. When she was a little girl, her parents immigrated to the U.S. in pursuit of the American dream. Well, that little girl's grown up, and I think it's pretty safe to say that she's got it figured out.
They just left everything that they knew and came to this country so that we have a fighting chance.
Mayor Susan Shin Angulo was just 4 years old when she came to the United States. Her parents picking the Philadelphia suburbs as their new home.
My dad actually was in the Korean military, and he was in the Marine Corps, and he has traveled all over the world. He knew when he was a Marine, when he came to the United States, that this was a land of opportunity.
Angulo moved to South Jersey when she met her now husband, the two picking Cherry Hill to call home.
When I drove around the Cherry Hill area, I just loved the diversity and the inclusiveness of it.
Little did she know 20 years later, she'd become the mayor, the first Korean American woman to hold the title not only in Cherry Hill, but the entire state.
It is a true honor. Unfortunately, my father passed away 3 years ago, but my mom was here and she was so proud.
But shortly after she was sworn in, the pandemic hit and violence and hatred against Asian Americans became more prevalent.
Being Asian American in the United States and experiencing COVID at the same time, there was a lot of challenges and difficulties associated with that. And it's a mixed feeling. But what I have to say is, as an Asian American, one of the key things that we have to do is that we need to speak up and speak out. Speak out against discrimination, against bigotry, against xenophiles.
She says her goal is to not only instill in her 2 teenage daughters to stand up to this type of hate, but to inspire change in their whole generation.
I spoke at a Asian hate rally. And one of the greatest things that I saw in the crowd were young people. They were motivated, they were united, and it was all sorts of young people. And I want to inspire these young Americans and young people that they can do anything that they want and be the next mayor of Cherry Hill as well.
And that shouldn't be too hard because it looks like this next generation is already fighting the good fight.
I've faced discrimination since I was in first grade, where people would pull their eyes back.
They rolled down their windows and they started to shout predominantly anti-Asian slurs.
What do they want? Equity, peace, and respect. When do they want it? Now. Kat and Raghav are just two teenagers from Westchester making their voices heard at every rally. Despite pushback for making noise, the two persist, organizing students from their respective high schools to stand up against Asian hate. Raghav's efforts even caught the attention and support of Senator Chuck Schumer.
This is a fight for people of my age, of my community, to finally get the justice that they deserve.
Because I don't want to deal with it my entire life. I don't want to be like 60 and have the same issue going on. I'd like to see some change.
They consider themselves a new generation of Asian Americans who don't want to keep their heads down or stay quiet. Where there's injustice, they'll be loud and proud, calling on the attention of our lawmakers. And that's where this next trailblazer comes in. She was a young Chinese immigrant who found herself in Syosset, New York, hoping for a better future. Just over 30 years later, she became the first Asian American member to serve in the president's cabinet.
We certainly thought of America as a land of golden opportunities.
In 1961, 8-year-old Elaine Chao left her native Taiwan for the promise of America. Her 37-day journey aboard a cargo ship with her mother and sisters to the U.S. foreshadowed a life of possibilities, challenges, and achievements.
I will well and faithfully discharge.
40 years later, Chao made history when she became U.S. Secretary of Labor, the first Asian American woman to hold a cabinet position. For Chao, it marked the fulfillment of the American dream.
Thanks, Mom.
A dream she credits her parents, James and Ruth Chao, with helping to make come true.
My father and my mother were such patriots, and they believed in America, and they believed that all the sacrifices that they made was worth it. Our initial days in America were very, very tough. My father held 3 jobs to make ends meet. We lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, New York.
Every night after a hard day's work, Chao's father helped her learn English. He says his eldest daughter was a quick study.
Elaine is a very, very charming, smart, and a good girl.
Chao started 8th grade at Syosset High School when her family moved to Long Island, settling in this house on Convent Road.
To us, that house seemed to represent that we were finally on our way.
But Chao says people were not always welcoming. She says she was bullied in school because she's Chinese.
I was called a racial slur, but I didn't know what that racial slur meant. So I actually went to another group of kids and asked them, hey, those kids just called me X. What does that mean? I kind of had a feeling it was not a good term.
Both then and now, Chao finds strength to rise above barriers by looking back on her roots. This photo of her father's ancestral village gives her inspiration.
I think to myself, if my father could have emerged from this tough, modest environment and get to where he is today, his blood runs in my veins. I surely have the courage to overcome and not succumb to the challenges that I am facing now.
The shy Chinese girl who hadn't known a word of English when she arrived in the U.S. became a trailblazer. She was the first Asian American to serve as chair of the Maritime Commission, Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Director of the Peace Corps, and President of the United Way. In 2017, Chao was sworn in as Transportation Secretary in the Trump administration. She resigned after the Capitol riot in January.
My journey is not finished yet.
Chao says her mission now is to inspire others to reach for their dreams.
America's a wonderful country. It has so many opportunities. So find your passion and work hard, and I'm sure you'll get to where you want to go.
That sentiment rang true for another woman also on Long Island. Tina Nguyen is sweet enough, but she's one lady you don't want to mess with. Her tough journey into America 40 years ago molded her into the amazing mom she is today.
To be an offensive lineman, you've got to be tough. Walt Whitman Sr. Joe Robert is, and he got it from his mom.
She's not afraid of anybody. She might be a little Asian lady, but she'll go anywhere with anyone.
She's tough.
She's very tough.
Joe's mom is Tina Nguyen, but about 40 years ago, she was known by another name.
When you say boat people, people know it was the Vietnamese who escaped Vietnam. I was one of them.
In 1981, Tina's parents were desperate to get her out of Vietnam and get her to an Indonesian refugee camp. So they gave her money, and eventually she made it to the boat on her third attempt.
You have to do it in a secret way, and the first time didn't happen. And then the second time, I got thrown in jail.
As a 10-year-old, that must have been pretty horrifying.
Yes, it was, but the love of leaving the country was more. So obviously I did it again the third time I left.
Third time was the charm.
Third time was the charm, yeah.
Tina eventually made it to America and made sure some special items made the trip as well.
The Constitution of the United States. Didn't know a word of English, but I got one.
What did you write in those journals?
About leaving the country, miss my parents, miss my little brother Tom. I cried every day, I think.
It kind of feels like unreal to me how when she was that age, she had to go through that.
You don't know how good you have it.
Exactly. It just makes me grateful for what I have.
What Joe has is a huge appreciation for not only what his mom went through as a young girl, but where she is now.
I went to school, Elwood School District. Now I work there. I'm the accountant now.
Making his mom proud, Joe's off to Inouye College to study next year.